Wait a minute, something's going wrong. Something's on the phone. 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. Talking about how she can make it right. Yeah. Well, happiness is when you really feel good about somebody. There's nothing wrong being in love with someone. Yeah. Oh, baby, love that happiness. Love that happiness. Oh.
Emerging Voices, a radio show that amplifies the voices marginalized by the mass media. Every other Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. at MyCYradio with Christina Demetriades. Hello, dear friends. You're listening to the Emerging Voices radio show on MyCYradio, Nicosia, Cyprus. We're broadcasting from the Lydra Palace buffer zone, and today I'm very happy and excited to have with me in the studio Memnia Theodorou, who is the first Cypriot woman who traveled from the UK to Australia on a sailing boat. By profession, she's a dentist, and overall, as a human being, she's very inspiring, very impressive, and delightful. Memnia, thank you so much for accepting my invitation, and welcome to the show.
Christina, thank you very much for having me here. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. It's amazing to be here in the buffer zone.
Yes.
Amazing.
How do you feel? Is the first time you come here?
It is the first time that I come here because I've lived abroad for a lot of years, so I haven't been in touch with the Cypriot reality a lot the last decade or so. So it is moving for me actually to be here in the buffer zone and seeing Lydra Palace that I read so much when I was a kid about Lydra Palace is yes, moving.
Yes. And you are also going to move us today with your story. Lots of moving and inspiring stories to draw from. Memnia, by profession, you're a dentist.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself so that our audience gets to know you a little bit?
Yes, so when I was about 12 years old, I decided that I wanted to be a dentist, funny as it is. I went to the dentist for the first time with my father, and I got fascinated by the bits and bobs that go going in my mouth.
Wow.
And unlike most kids, I left there inspired, and as I walked out, my dad reminded me this story recently, actually, and he said that as we were walking down the stairs and I was holding your hand, you turned around and you told me that you were going to be a dentist. So that's when I took my decision. I went and studied in Thessaloniki, dentistry.
Yes.
After that, I moved to London, to England. I wanted to further my education, perhaps do a master's, gain some experience. So that's where I found myself practicing dentistry for the next decade almost.
Wow.
Yes. I'm giving my age now, but yes.
Are people doing maths out there?
Yes.
And then how did you, I mean, were you sailing as a hobby? Was sailing in your life before you decided to embark on this very difficult, challenging journey, or not? Were you athletic? Were you?
I have always been athletic, and sea was always a big part of my life. Just being around the sea, swimming, scuba diving, all those sort of stuff. But sailing, not so much. I did take a course while I was a student in Thessaloniki, but that's where I left it, and that was just for leisure sailing type. When I moved to London, I didn't actually seek it because you would have to travel to the coast, and obviously it's quite cold there. It's not like Cyprus, so I actually left it for a decade. I never practiced sailing again. It was more that I wanted to participate in an adventure rather than sailing per se.
Okay, but it does make a difference if it's a sailing adventure, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, it had to do with water and sea, which I loved, so it was a no-brainer for me. And the big advertising campaign that they have on the Underground had a big question on it. It said, could that be you? It said, achieve something remarkable, and he had a big boat in the middle of the sea, of the oceans, and he just wrote there, doctor, dentist, housewife, engineer, taxi driver, and then there was an arrow saying, could this be you? And well, I kept looking at it for a couple of years, I think, this poster, on and off. Whenever it would come on, I would look at it.
Okay.
And eventually I did sign up, and funnily enough, I became one of those posts in the Underground in the end.
Which we used to advertise the radio show today, so everybody can see half of you with the sailing context and half of you,
the normal person beforehand. Yes,
Before
that's
and
what
after.
it is. Exactly. Yes.
So, okay, you wanted something big, you wanted something drastic. May I ask you what prompted you? What was it that you were looking for? Where were you at in your life at that point?
People that have watched my TEDx talk, they already know the answer to this. But unfortunately, the answer is that I was going through a very tough period in my life for the last year or so. I mean, my sister was diagnosed with cancer, and her battle was very short. We lost her. And so, thank you. So I lost my sister. I also was in an unhappy relationship which ended. I also had a house deal that didn't go through, and I also had a very bad manager at work, all in the same year. So I was in a very, very rough patch, let's say, of my life, and everything looked depressing and hopeless and helpless. And I had tried a lot of things to come out of this dark mode. But they were not successful, and so I said that I need something very big, something that is totally different and completely out of my comfort zone, just to shake me up and wake me up, really. So that's why I signed up for this huge adventure. Yes.
Yes. Wow. It sounds like you know they say when it rains it pours. So
Yes.
it was all together. Everything.
Yes.
All the conditions in your life were pushing you to something, which ended up being this trip, this journey. Trip. Yes.
I have to say, it still took me quite some time to take the decision, because when you're really low, at a low point, you take your time, kind of. Unfortunately, you go through stages, perhaps the stages of grief, but not just that. It takes a little while to say enough of this. I did enough crying, and I did enough, feeling sorry for myself. I have to do something about it. And it did take me about a couple of years to sign up and go on this adventure. Yes.
Memnia, you're a very brave woman, not only because you took this adventure, you undertook it, but also because I think even more, if I may say, for sharing your story with people openly and empowering others, inspiring others to not give up.
I think this was a big decision that I had to take before I walked on this TEDx stage. When I was talking to the curator beforehand, I was expressing to him my doubts and my worries, whether I should share the whole of my story, or whether I should just say, well, I had some bad times and I decided to go on it. And then I took a brave decision, like you say, that I will share what happened in my life, because that's the only way to help more people. That's the only way to prompt others to get out of this bad phase of their lives. If they don't know what I went through, then how are they going to be inspired? And so the opening sentence of that TED Talk was that I felt more stressed preparing the talk and standing on this stage. I was very vulnerable up there than I felt just crossing oceans and oceans.
Imagine that, and you didn't let that show. So there you go. My respect for being a brave woman and being out there for other women and other people to get inspired by.
Thank you. I prepared a lot for this talk exactly because I was very nervous about it. And so this is my advice to anyone who has to do public speaking: prepare a lot beforehand, just in case things go wrong. At least you have something to fall back to.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. So, okay, I want to start talking a bit about the practical details of this trip. You know, people are curious. People are asking, what? Okay, you didn't need any level of skills, let's say, beforehand. All these people, doctors, accountants, taxi drivers, all these people can do this amazing trip. I mean, it's a long trip. Very hard, very challenging, very difficult, and very scary. You know. So, how did you prepare physically for it?
Well, I'll give you a little bit of background for the race, just so you get the context of it. So this was founded by Sir Robin Knox-Johnston, who was the first person that went around the globe on a sailboat, obviously, single-handedly, non-stop.
Wow.
So that was back in 1969. And his dream, his vision was to create as many sailors as possible, and sailors that could go into these very treacherous ocean environments that you would not normally find yourself in. So he founded a Clip Around the World yacht race, and the magic thing about it, the amazing thing about it, is that anyone can apply, over 18 obviously. So people who have some sailing experience are preferred, I guess, but that's not something that will make them not take you on board, because they do provide 4 weeks of very intense training, so you're all at the same level of knowledge and skill as much as you can. Obviously, people who know sailing, they're at a higher level, but in any case, you know the basics. You can sail a boat after that. Mm-hmm. Probably not on your own, but you're competent enough to be on board this boat.
Right. 4 weeks of intensive training.
Yes.
In
the
London,
UK.
Yes?
In the UK.
All right.
In Gosport on the south. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you embarked on a journey after the 4 weeks training, which I imagine was very hard to begin with. I can imagine.
Especially at the beginning, when you're first faced with this massive yacht. It's 70 foot, 23 meters. It's not your normal yacht.
Wow.
And also it's called a stripped down racing yacht. These yachts are made for races. They are not for luxuries. There are no beds, there are no bunks, there are no cabins. You all sleep together.
Where?
On these bunk beds, which is they're just kind of suspended from the walls.
Okay.
Inside a sleeping bag. So it's a common space. The kitchen is also there as well. It's a common space. There is so much noise you wouldn't believe, but you're so exhausted that I've always had trouble sleeping. I'm a light sleeper, but I was so exhausted there that you just fall asleep.
Wow.
You're deprived of sleep the whole time.
You're so hungry for it that
exactly
your body goes for it whenever you get the chance.
Because you go into a watch system. You're 3 hours on, 3 hours off. Or 4 hours. If you miss that sleep on those 4 hours, that's it. Then you have to go another 4 and another 4 hours without any sleep. So, and you wake up in the middle of the night. The worst watch is the 2 to 6.
Oh.
So, yes.
Oh dear. And how many people were on the boat?
There were about 20 people.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of
to
people.
To share a space with, I'm thinking.
Exactly. But you only bump into half of them, because the yacht races 24/7. So that means half the people are on deck and they are racing the boat no matter the conditions, and then the other half are sleeping, and then you swap. And there is never, you never stop. It's 24/7. Even if it's storms or if it's, I don't know, blizzards, you still have to sail the boat.
Okay.
Which can be very dangerous, but... Yeah.
Yes, of course. I mean, did you have someone with you who had any special knowledge, just by accident, let's say, or by chance, on this trip?
The skipper is professional. Only the skipper is, and he's responsible for creating the route that we would take, navigating the boat through the weather systems. So he makes a plan, and he can help us out if we need to. It's not his responsibility, though. His responsibility is to keep us as safe as possible, and then secondly, race as fast as possible. So it's the combination of these two, because it's not just a crossing, it's a race. So you have 11 other boats around you that you race with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm trying to put myself there, and something inside me is screaming, no, take me back to the studio. I don't want to be on that boat.
Well, I guess some people felt like that as well when they were faced with what we faced there, but
Really?
It was too late. You can't go back.
Oh, my dear. What happened then?
Well, nothing. You just get, when you start this journey, you just watch the land just, going away from you, and you just watch it. I watched it for a bit, and I was just like, okay, you can make the jump if you want to. If you really change your mind, you can still swim to the shore. These thoughts they're internally. You just go through them, and it's just your body reacting to just not wanting to get out of its comfort zone.
Exactly.
But that's why we have to push ourselves. So once the shore is really far away, that's it. You can't go anywhere for the next 3 or 4 weeks, depending on how long it will take to reach the next port. Because we did is divided in legs, so we make some stops along the way.
Okay. Do you remember where?
Oh yes, of course. We had lots of fun there.
Where did you stop?
Well, we left London, and the first stop was in Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil. Then the next stop was in Cape Town, which is magnificent, amazing, one of the best destinations I've visited. And then we crossed the Southern Ocean, which is the southern parts of Atlantic, Indian Ocean, and Pacific Ocean. It's a mighty, mighty ocean. Not many people, a handful of people have found themselves in that ocean. It's not common for one to be there, apart from racing reasons and maybe big ships, cargo ships perhaps.
Yes.
It revolves around Antarctica. It's very cold. There is a good chance you find icebergs there. So you have to have a lookout and be very careful. We measured the temperature of the water every so often, just to make sure that there were no icebergs around. It's a very dangerous ocean, that one. And then when you cross that one, then you reach Australia, the western part of it. And then we went round Australia towards Sydney. I mean, and it's one part of Australia to the other, which is a whole continent.
Yes.
It's not like our little Europe here.
Yeah.
It's a big distance.
Or our tiny Cyprus.
Yes.
Wow. And okay, let me get this straight. It was a race, but you had to stop for maybe refueling and stuff like that.
And getting food and...
And how long did you stop for?
Depends.
Were you rushing even when you stopped?
Yes. Well, the stops were not necessarily to refuel, because you can just prepare the boat to go for longer periods. You can store more food, let's say. Not the most healthy food, but you can store more food. But we stopped because the race is divided into legs. You can do as much as you want to or as little as you want to. And my first, when I signed up only for the first leg, to cross the Atlantic Ocean, so from London to Rio de Janeiro. But I just fell in love with the camaraderie and the spirit, the team spirit, and being in the sea, and the serenity and calmness that the oceans give you. Even if it's blizzards, even if it's storms, you're out of yourself. It's an environment you would never find yourself in, and it's just, you're inspired and in awe with nature and the creatures of nature. It's amazing. So
Talk
I carried
to us about
on.
the creatures of nature.
It is so unique to see them in their natural environment. We would see hundreds and hundreds of dolphins, and they play with you. You know, they're very playful animals. They like to play with the bow of the boat. They would just follow us. They will appear just out of nowhere. They will be jumping up in the water as if they were putting a show, literally. And then just all of a sudden, they would just disappear. Right where they came from. We didn't know where they went. They would disappear. And sometimes at nights, especially in the Atlantic, not so much in the cold oceans, you don't see this phenomenon a lot. But there is a phenomenon, I think it's called bioluminescence, if I'm not correct, or phosphorescence we used to call it. I don't know the technical term of it. But basically, when you stir the water, the surface of the water, like in our wakes of the boats, then this little turbulence creates this phosphorescence effect of the waters that surrounds the boat, and is magical. I thought I was in the movie The Life of Pi, or Pi.
Yes,
Pi.
Pi in English, Pi in Greek, yes.
Yes. In any case, so what would happen is that we would see ghosts under the boat, like phosphorescence, green, yellowish ghosts that they would appear a bit higher up in the water and then disappear. And then we figured out it was the dolphins following us. But we wouldn't have known if it wasn't for the phosphorescence, because they were under the surface. Yes. So even at night, they were playing with our boats.
Wow.
I don't know how
Beautiful.
these creatures... Yeah.
I had an experience as I know it, it's a bioluminescent bay. It was in Latin America, in the Caribbean. And it was one of the most breathtaking things I've ever experienced. I can only imagine...
Cool. Yeah.
Because obviously the one I went to was an organized short trip from the shore. It wasn't in the middle of the ocean or something like that. So there were no dolphins around. Yeah. I can only imagine the magic you experienced with the dolphins. It was magic.
And it's like keeping you company. You know, there are little creatures around you that you don't even know, but it just keeps you company. Sometimes we were worried about the bigger creatures we didn't want to bump into, but yeah, that's another story. Because actually we saw whales as well. We saw them breaching, just jumping up in the air right next to us. But actually whales are a bit dangerous in this sport because they rest a lot of the time on the surface of the sea. Just taking in sun or breathing. I don't know what they do. But if you bump into a very big one of those, you can have the keel detached, the little weight that holds your boat upright.
Oh.
So or the boat can break and water comes in. I mean, obviously you would hurt the whale as well, but she will most probably survive. But your boat will have, big damage. So they're actually quite dangerous for us, whales. Yes.
I can't say I don't empathize with the whale. I do,
Yes.
because if she's just sleeping there.
I know. We empathize as well, but you can't see them. You don't know they're there. They might be just underneath the surface, and the boat, is a few meters under the water. So, yeah.
Imagine, what a challenge, I would never have guessed this one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And did you bump into any bigger creatures that you had to deal with?
Thankfully not.
Okay, good.
We didn't actually hit anything with the period of time that I was on, but other people have hit reefs sometimes. So there will be shallow bits of water just randomly. And then if you're not paying too much attention because you're in the middle of nowhere and you never think that you will find a shallow bit in the ocean and you haven't paid enough attention, there have been cases that actually boats were grounded and they had to be rescued. There have been cases, not us, but yeah.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something you said. I picked up on it, but I wanted to hear about the animals first. Now back to people. You mentioned how incredible the comradeship feeling was. Can you talk to us about that? Did you know, first of all, anybody among the 20 people that you joined on the boat?
You meet them a few months before this event. If you're located in London, that is, because we had people from all over the world. You wouldn't fly from Australia, for instance, in London for the allocating event to meet everyone. So I was based in London, so I went to this event where we met the skipper and we met each other. And we kind of established the values of the boat. We kind of said, well, what does everyone want? Do you want to have a safe passage, or are you competitive? Do you want to race this boat as hard as possible? We had this chat and we decided. But I'll tell you something. The personality that people have on land has nothing to do with the personality that they have on boat. Their raw, primal self comes to light.
Wow.
You might be socially pleasant and an interesting person, but then you might be very bossy on a boat, or you might just want things to be done your own way. If I'm having a drink with you at the pub, probably I won't see that side of you, and I won't be spending too much time with you anyway. But then if we are 24/7 on a boat, then I will see that side of you as well. And I found that a lot of people that you liked on land and you didn't like on board, and vice versa. Some people that you liked on board, then you didn't have anything in common when you went back on land. It's very, very interesting relationship.
Really interesting, because, okay, it's one thing to have to share your space, your personal space, and this has to do with culture as well. It depends which culture you come from. Some cultures embrace it, some cultures don't allow it that much, to be in close proximity with another person. So first of all, you compromise your personal space for a long period of time. How long did you travel for?
5 months.
For 5 months, having no privacy. I remember from your TEDx talk about the toilet.
Yes.
There was no door. It was just a zip on a fabric.
Yes, it was just a fabric, and obviously, as I said, it's not soundproof and it's not smell-proof.
Yeah.
And actually, you don't care one bit about this because you have more risks in mind when you go to the toilet, actually, because the boat is on an angle. And it's rocking. It's on 45 degrees angle and it's rocking. I describe it as a tumble dryer. It's like you're in a tumble dryer. And so
how do you use the toilet?
Very difficult. Very, very difficult. First of all, you have to pump in some water. You can't just go like it. It has to already have some water. There is no flush. You have to pump it in.
Okay.
obviously it's on a side because you're at an angle. So already the low side of the water is already very close to the edge of the toilet, right? And then you have
is
to
where
sit.
you are.
Yes, and then you have to sit. You can't stand. First of all, it's very low. Secondly, it's just going all over the place. So both men and women had to sit, and then obviously you go. And as you go, the content fills up, and then it just reaches the toilet, and the toilet is like a tumble dryer again. So you can only imagine the mess that has happened in there numerous times.
Oh my dear.
And if you slip in there, you can just fly underneath this the cloth that blocks the entrance of the toilet. Is not anything sturdy to keep you in there. So it was actually a whole deal. And as the weather got colder and colder, we were wearing I counted up to 7 layers of trousers and 7 layers of tops.
7 trousers, okay.
Yes.
7 tops.
7 trousers, yes.
Oh dear.
Yes. So and is obviously you have the weather gear as well, the foul weather gear, foulies we call them. So it's very sturdy and supposedly waterproof material. So you have to get out of all these clothes to go to the toilet. It takes you, 15-20 minutes to do that anyway. Then you have to carefully go in there, do your business, and you have to pump it all out, clean up whatever mess you've created, and then wear all the other clothes and go back on deck.
Oh my
So
dear.
it was a process that when it was really rough, it would take 1 hour. It would take 1 hour to go to the toilet.
And then you think about it again.
Yes.
Do I need to go now?
Yes. So when there was a little bit of calm sea, there will be a queue for the toilet.
Wow.
It is true.
Was there only one toilet?
There were 2, but very often they got clogged up.
Oh.
Very often.
Listen to what challenges. Oh,
I
dear.
know, it's
Yeah.
horrible. Yes,
I mean, you do share this with people that, okay, you're put there with them. It's not like you knew them and you chose them.
No.
And yes, as you said, personalities change because you are in a very specific context.
And a confined space under stress as well.
Yes, huge amounts of stress.
Yes. But our skipper used to say that it's part of our development to learn how to deal with difficult people in confined space. So
Yes.
you build your character. You learn more about yourself, what you stand for, what you can tolerate or not.
Your boundaries.
Your boundaries. But you also try to be civil as well at the same time.
Of course.
I would say that I was fortunate enough to be on the British boat. I had been living in England for the last maybe 8 years at that time, and I had never appreciated British people as much as I did after I did on this. I got to know them more, because on the surface, British people can seem reserved and cold, especially to us Mediterraneans. But as I lived there with them for 5 months, I got to know that they're actually just humans like you and me, and they have the same emotions and they have the same frustrations. It's just that they express themselves in a different way.
Yes, and
And
they
I-
are very civil.
And they are very civil. So
Yes.
I actually got to appreciate a lot that I was on the British boat. It taught me a lot of things about being polite and tactful and respectful, actually. Yeah.
Yes, because, I mean, this is culture, of course, but in the English culture, from my experience as well, there are boundaries and they are respected.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's good. I have to ask you now, I mean,
Go on. It's about the toilet.
no, about the culture-wise.
Uh-huh.
Can you imagine having taken this trip in the British context, let's say, in the British culture? Can you imagine taking it with Cypriots? And how do you
I
imagine that?
can, but I
would
don't
to
think
be?
it would have been at such a professional level, I think.
What do you mean? What was professional about it?
Our skipper was trained in the Navy, I think.
Okay, let's say the skipper
So-
was a professional. We don't care from where. What about the team?
The reason why I mentioned the skipper is because I realized that the leader sets the tone in every situation.
Okay.
And when I say leader, I don't mean just the captain of the boat. A leader could be a parent. A leader can be obviously the CEO of a company, a mother, whatever. The leader sets the tone. So our skipper, the leader, was very professional and wanted things to be done rightly and respect each other. He wouldn't allow us to disrespect people. If we had vegetarians on board or people that didn't eat this or didn't eat that, we had to respect that. There wouldn't be any huffing and puffing that it makes our lives difficult. We had to accommodate for each other. He would ask everyone to respect each other's skills and boundaries. If you didn't feel like going to the front of the boat because it was very dangerous, nobody would push you to go there. I mean, you were expected to try your best, but then, different people have different levels, let's say. So this is why I mentioned the skipper. He set the tone to respect each other and value each other and encourage each other. So he set that tone that I think at least up to when I left, we carried that message with us. And Cypriots very often don't oblige as well to authority, let's say. So I don't know how they would have taken. That's why I use the word professional, because he wanted us to see this in a serious way, not to just mock around. We're here to do this job, race as fast as we can and as safe as we can. When we go to port, we have fun, we party. But while we are here, we are taking this seriously.
Yes, and also it helps to focus on the goal because the conditions are so adverse. The weather, you just described the plain thing we all take for granted on land, going to the bathroom.
Exactly.
Can you imagine that? I cannot imagine, sleeping in a bed or even preparing a meal.
Oh, that was another disaster.
What did you eat on board?
We had a girl named Claire, and she was our victualler. What that means is that her responsibility was to, before we went in the sea, to prepare recipes that they would repeat every 7 days to eat. So she would prepare menus, and then she would try them out. And then these menus were not anything fancy. They couldn't be anything fancy. We couldn't have a lot of fresh meat either, because we had only one little freezer. That's it for 20 people. And you had to cook 3 times a day for 20 people. It had to be practical. So we ate a lot of rice and a lot of stews. So it was mainly one pot meal. So everything goes in the big casserole. And then just some rice to accompany that. In a rice maker we invested in, because you could tie it down, shut the lid, and you didn't worry about explosions while you're inside a storm. The stove is on a gimbal, it's called. So that means it moves with the boat. It takes the angle of the boat, so it stays parallel with the sea. Yet we still have some explosions in there. I mean, when the boat goes up the waves and then it just slams down in the trough of the waves, obviously you're going to have the food just splashing all over. So we had some disasters like that as well. That's why we had to keep wearing our heavy weather gear even when it was hot. We had to wear it in the kitchen, exactly because things like that could happen and we could burn ourselves. I actually have a burn mark from the first leg. Yeah.
Wow.
On my arm, yeah.
So all these things come with sailing, huh?
Yes, I know.
And all this jargon, you keep mentioning all these strange words.
Oh, sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It's you're making my next question flow more easily. Was this part of the training, or did you know these things before, or?
Well, the first week of training is just getting to know the boat and familiarize yourself with the sailing terminology and how actually you sail a boat. So you go on day sailing trips, let's say, and then you return back to port and you sleep on the boat if you wish for a week. That's the first week. Then the second week is just getting used to this sleep pattern of being awake for 3 hours and then 4 hours and then sleeping for another 4 hours. So then you kind of get used to this pattern of having to cook and sleep and everything on board. And then you learn more and then you practice more. So you are kind of experienced when you get out there, but truthfully, nothing can prepare you for when you're at sea. Nothing.
Really?
Yes, because it's much, much worse than you can ever imagine.
Oh my God. Yes, I can only imagine, as you said. I'm trying here to put myself in your position, and all I keep thinking is, I admire you. This is the conclusion.
Thank you. I also admire people that have achieved a lot more in sailing than me, but yeah.
I want to come back to sailing, but first I want to ask you, overall, because I'm wary of the time, and I also have in mind that we could talk about this for hours.
Yes.
And you're so easy to talk to and so interesting to talk to that we could stay here for hours. I want to ask you, Memnia, what was the biggest challenge for you during these 5 months?
The biggest challenge, if I could name one.
For you personally.
while I was on this journey?
Yes.
Well, the biggest worry that I had before I went on this adventure is how I would cope with 20 other people. The relationships that will build. This was my worry. Because I lived on my own in London for maybe seven years or so, and I studied away from Cyprus. I studied in Greece, so I had been away from my parents for long. So I had always been very independent, and I didn't have to share my space with other people. So this was my biggest worry. But
while on board?
Before going on board.
Yeah, what about
and then when I went on board, I actually discovered the joys of sharing your life and with other people and having other people into your proximity. So as soon as I joined this race, then this worry it was not there anymore, and I just learned to deal with the frustrations and how I coped under stress and how to deal with people that I didn't particularly like, but I had to be to cooperate with because they were on my team, on my watch. So I think this was the biggest challenge. I mean, it was a worry before, and then learning how to deal with that, deal with people, I think it was the biggest, challenge that I overcame. We could talk about, the fear that I had in the seas and all that sort of stuff, but I don't mention it because honestly, because I was in such a bad emotional state when I signed up, I didn't take that fear. I was thinking, what could go worse? Whatever I left back on land was actually much, much worse than the oceans and the storms and everything. This was actually one of my thoughts back there when I would see wind and rain and hailstones at some point and waves over us. I said, whatever I left behind actually was worse emotionally. So that didn't bother me because I was in such state.
Okay. You did share a song with me that I want to share with our audience, and I want to give you the opportunity to say something about it rather than me reiterating.
So whenever we had the opportunity, we would play some music on board. I say when we had the opportunity because it was obviously very windy and very stormy, and you're in actually life-threatening situations. Music is the last thing on your mind. And also our waterproof speakers became non-waterproof after a little while. So we would only play music when the weather conditions allowed us, when it was a little bit calmer. And it would instantly lift our moods and make us, feel more alive. And when we had tough sea, but not necessarily stormy weather, let's say, we would play this song, Sail by Owl Nation, which is a very powerful song, and it would just make us focus on the sea in front of us and watch the wind and just sail the boat through this windy and dangerous situation with a lot of confidence. It's amazing what music can do to you.
Yes, definitely. Let's hear the song. Let's enjoy it.
Sail So blame it on my ADD, baby. Sell. 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 Sell.
Lovely.
Very powerful song, isn't it?
Yes, it is indeed. And I can only imagine what it did for you, the role it served for you on board. On board, yes?
Yes.
I'm using the right terminology.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So, Memnia, you entered this challenge, this journey at a very low point in your life. I'm also thinking of what you shared on your TEDx talk. You reached rock bottom. You hit rock bottom, and basically the only way was up. So why not do something huge and drastic and amazing, and to shake myself up and challenge myself and conquer myself?
Yes.
Do you feel
Conquer my fears, basically.
Conquer your fears. Do you feel like you did?
At some level, I think this is one of the messages that people need to hear, because I don't think they realize that when they see people who have achieved a lot of things, they think that they're fearless. It's not that you're fearless. It's just that you learn to dance with your fear. It's always there. And this goes where you're taking a sailing challenge, whether you're taking a challenge of setting up a new business, or giving birth, deciding to have a children, or this is true to every challenge, every new chapter in your life. When you're outside your comfort zone, you have fear, because it's something that you're not used to doing. It's not in the comfort zone, your everyday life. So we had fear. We still had fear. There were nights that I couldn't sleep because of the banging of the boat, and I thought the boat would break and we would sink. We still had fear.
Yes.
But you learn to dance with it, is the best way I can describe it. So the fear is there, but it doesn't stop you from actually going for your goals, going into the sailing trip, starting up the business you've always dreamt, have a family even if it's scary. This is a big message that I learned, that the fear will always be there.
And it's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You have to learn to live with it.
Yeah, we need to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And address it.
Yes.
You address it. Yes,
Yeah,
it
exactly.
needs some attention from you. Give it the attention it wants, and then you decide, not the fear.
Exactly.
Yes.
What you said is very important. Don't take the decisions. Don't let the decisions be dictated by your fear.
No.
Acknowledge it. It's there, but I am taking the decisions. I take control of my mind and take the decisions. And I'm talking about calculated risks mostly. I'm not talking jumping out of a big building and I'm just talking about you've done your research, and then know that you will experience fear when you're actually stepping into the new environment. But go for it anyway.
Yes, you are more than your fear.
Yes.
Definitely. So you challenged yourself. You overcame to a satisfactory level, let's say, your fears, do you feel like you've expanded your comfort zone as a result?
Oh,
of
very
this?
much so. You cannot go back after this. You cannot. There are very few things that scare me now, or that I allow them to scare me to the level that I won't attempt something. You see, there is this magical notion that happens when you see yourself going through storms and actually making it, and actually being able to command this boat, this huge beast of boat, 70 foot, 23 meters. When you see yourself holding the helm and going through this, then when you land, when you go back on land, you're like, there is nothing that I cannot do if I set my mind to it. If I decide that I want something, yes, I can do it.
The power of the human mind.
Exactly. So you return back on land with, not only expanded comfort zone, but a whole different mindset, a lot more confidence. And this is actually something that I wanted to say to anyone listening to you. Particularly the ladies of this island. We are not encouraged enough as women to participate in adventures. In sports in general, but adventures also. Everyone around us is a little bit more cautious just because we're women. Oh my God, and what is a woman going to do in the middle of the ocean, blah, blah, blah. Of course, I heard all this chatter. Thankfully, not from my parents. My father smiled and he said, oh, my daughter is crazy. She's going to go anyway. My mother obviously was worried a lot. But I would encourage everyone, especially the ladies, to get involved into sports and into adventures, because the boost of self-confidence that it will give you, it's amazing. You will get to know yourself, your boundaries, your limits, how much you can achieve. I would encourage everyone.
Beautiful. And how about now? Do you do any sailing now? Does sailing have any role in your life now?
I have tried to enroll in teams in Cyprus, but I found them less competitive. I wanted actually to come back here and be in a team in Cyprus, but I find them that they don't actually take it very seriously. It's more like, oh yeah, we go there, we go out there, we race, but it's not really. And I'm used to, I guess, the British way of doing things, that we are serious about this and then we go back on land and then we have a party. Whereas the Cypriot reality is not very much that. So, and this is not just in sailing. I think in many professions we lack a little bit of professionalism in many things here. So I haven't yet found a team here that I would like to be part of. To be honest,
I hope you do.
I do, or I hope I create one. I don't know.
Yes, why not?
We need a
Why
sponsor
not?
with a boat, but yes.
Tiny detail, it's all right.
Yes.
Okay, and what challenge is next for you now?
So my next big challenge actually is writing about this adventure. After a year passed and many people asking me about this adventure and what it meant to me and how it was like to live there, to be there, I decided that it's a legacy that I will want to live for my own children, if I ever have any, for everyone in the family, but also for people who are curious about my journey or who would like to take a similar adventure or a different one. So this is my next big chapter. I am writing about it. I'm kind of halfway through it, and I'm realizing, as many things, that once you start doing it, that there is a lot more to do than what you thought. So it is actually a big mountain to climb, or a big ocean to cross, if you want to put it that way. But this is my biggest challenges now, as well as setting up a dental practice here in Cyprus.
Yes.
So my plate is kind of full at the moment.
Yes, but I'm sure you'll do fantastic in both. I'm so excited to hear that you're writing about all this, because the outreach will be much bigger, and it's something that is creating positive change. It's encouraging people. It's an emerging positive voice. That's why you are on Emerging Voices today, because it's a voice that has... Thank you, honestly, because I'm so happy to support a positive message, a message that can inspire others, it can empower others, it can reassure others. You know, it's okay to be afraid.
It's okay.
It's all right. It's part of life, and it's just an emotion. Okay, it's a strong one, but it's not more than an emotion. I fully support you, and I want to wish you all the best.
Thank you. I'll be back here with my book.
Yes, please do. You are invited to be back and present us your book. That's a promise.
That's a promise.
Now, coming towards a close, I would like to give you some time here to just focus on what is your message, or what are your messages to our audience. So if anyone has not been listening for 57 minutes, what do you want them to know?
What I want them to know is that the comfort zone is just a gray area that nothing grows in there. You're comfortable in there, it feels okay, but nothing grows in there. You should actively seek to get out of your comfort zone and achieve things, and that if you are low in life at any point, if you think that there is no meaning, or you can't find, if you go through difficult times, just go out there and try something you've never tried before, especially the outdoors, especially adventures that are, you'll be part of a team. The team can lift you up. And it's never the end. If you are at rock bottom, as you said, the only way to go is up. So don't be disheartened. Just keep trying.
Keep trying, keep walking, keep sailing, keep swimming, keep living.
Exactly.
Yes. Memnia Theodorou, thank you so... Sorry, I just realized I've been saying it wrong. Dr. Memnia Theodorou.
It's all right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming here today.
Thank you.
It was so inspiring to have this conversation, to spend this hour together. You know you're welcome back anytime with your book.
Thank you very much.
We want to see it and we want to read it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. An amazing job you're doing here.
Thank you very much. Everyone, please take care, and we'll be together again in 2 weeks. Until then, keep smiling. Bye-bye. Emerging Voices, a radio show that amplifies the voices marginalized by the mass media. Every other Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. at MyCYradio with Christina Demetriades.